From the darkness of futures past, the magician longs to see one chance out between two worlds. Twin Peaks, Fire Walk with Me. The discussion here on the Douglas Fir Association. We're finally at the movie Twin Peaks, Fire Walk with Me, and the conclusion of Twin Peaks for about a quarter of a century. That was it. That was the kind of the ending. We ended with the beginning with the end, a prequel. So we've watched Fire Walk with Me, we've watched The Missing Pieces, and we've watched some extras on the Blu-ray set as well. But give me your initial impressions of the film Fire Walk with Me.
It definitely takes a different turn of pace from the show. I know you said to me before we watched the film, actually pretty much at the start of Twin Peaks when we started, that Fire Walk with Me takes a much darker tone, and you're definitely correct. It's so much darker than the show, and I feel like the film is the setting to do that in because the TV show was obviously being broadcast to everyone, and that's not going to be for everyone. So I get why maybe some of that was saved for the show, and of course Lynch wasn't involved in the whole show directing wise, so he had obviously full control over what he could do with Fire Walk with Me. And yeah, it's just so dark and macabre, but so brilliant, I think. And it's a great prequel to the show, I think. Just sets it, if you're watching Fire Walk with Me and then going straight into Twin Peaks, I think that's brilliant. Because by the time you've watched all the depressing stuff, you're really kind of into that, almost sort of Twin Peaks is, hard hitting in places, definitely, and it's definitely got those dark scenes, but you've also got that little bit of humor in there, which I think breaks that up. So I think if you're watching Fire Walk with Me and then going into Twin Peaks, that's a bit of a cool, a bit of a mellow out from the darkness of Twin Peaks, which I really like.
A little bit, yeah. And for a film that was released, just a year after the TV show ended, and the circumstances around that, Lynch wasn't ready to let go of Twin Peaks yet, and so he came up with this idea, and it was a three-picture deal with this company that was going to finance it. I didn't know this until very recently that apparently it was going to be a trilogy, and he did sign a three-picture deal, but obviously the film didn't do too well, and
Yeah,
and so that was what it was, and people even in the cast of Twin Peaks talk about how, as a whole, Twin Peaks kind of burned very bright, very fast, and then fizzled out. Um, but the film really announces itself right from the beginning with that opening, the credits, that moody theme, the kind of saxophone, the jazzy. It's kind of like a mournful piece, and just complete opposite to like the opening of the show with the kind of the bright Twin Peaks theme. I don't know. There's a bit of air to it. Whereas
yeah,
this, it's like, no, we're going darker with this. And there's definitely something to be said with that opening image of the TV screen and the static, and then like just the axe coming down onto the TV, and it's almost
yeah.
a bit like David Lynch's "fuck you" to the fact that the show got cancelled. There's definitely ways to read into that, and then you have that like 30-minute like prologue with
Yeah,
Chet Desmond and I forget the Sam Stanley, I think, Kiefer Sutherland's character, and it's like the inversion of Twin Peaks. They go to Deer Meadow and they go to the sheriff's department, and it's just a complete tonal opposite. There's
yeah.
there's no warmth there. The people there are just completely antagonistic towards these two FBI agents, and
I
they're
remember when sorry, go on.
no, no.
I remember when we first started Twin Peaks, and I said to you that I thought Dale would, sort of there'd be a bit of and what's the word?
Resistance from the
A bit, a
local
bit, a bit of
police, and
resistance.
yeah.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, and that's exactly what we got at the start of this. So I thought that was quite interesting.
Yeah, and I don't know fully if this is true, but I believe the original script that was going to be Cooper, and Carl
Yeah.
McLachlan was a bit cagey about returning and being typecast, and so it was changed. But I like it. I like those characters. And what did you think of the FBI agents and the kind of the Teresa Banks opening of the film?
Yeah, man, that's really cool. There's definitely some awesome scenes in there. I mean, just seeing Harry Dean Stanton on the screen again was pretty cool. I haven't seen him in a film for a bit, so that was really cool to see him. And that's the sort of character he plays really well, I think. Sort of reminded me of I can't remember his name from Breaking Bad, the junkyard guy.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so it reminded me of that kind of guy, and I really like that. But yeah, I thought that was fantastic. Just sort of setting up even before we get to Laura. I really like that because it sort of involves the first murder, and it's almost like a sort of complete story at that point. Then
Yeah, and there's, for as bleak as the film is, there are a few, I don't know if you call them funny moments, amusing moments maybe, kind of off kilter. There's the bit where they go into that diner and they want to speak to the woman who runs it or whatever, and the guy's like,
yeah,
now her name is Irene, and it is night. Don't go any further than that. There's nothing good about it. Like, it's just like this fucking. It's just, and then there's like in a room with this crackling thing. He's like, "You fix that damn lamp." Like, it's just such a weird.
yeah.
Like,
What was that line the lady at the diner says as well?
I've forgotten.
It's
We
something
both.
really obnoxious to them, wasn't it?
She called him Towhead. I think it was
That was
Towhead. I'm
it.
just, what the fuck is Towhead? But I do like the opening. I will say overall, I don't know if I like the overall structure of the film. The Teresa Banks thing is kind of part of the story and stuff, but I feel like I would rather have had more of Laura. Um,
Yeah,
and I'll just get this out of the way. My main criticism isn't much of a criticism, but I would have liked to have seen just a little bit more of her relationships as it pertained to the show. So there's Jacoby.
yeah,
I would have liked to maybe seen a scene with him. And then there's like Benjamin Horne, which I'm kind of in two minds about because I wonder if the whole thing where it's revealed that Benjamin Horne was in love with Laura and slept with her, if that was just thrown in that episode. Because you remember they were really pushing towards Benjamin Horne being the killer to throw
yeah,
people off. I don't know whether that was just thrown in there just to kind of lead people in the wrong direction. But I would have liked to have seen that maybe. So
yeah. I think it only really alluded to One-Eyed Jacks, didn't it?
yeah, that's true.
Yeah,
There was a mention of it that she hasn't worked there for a while or whatever. But so that's my only criticism, I guess. But it's also because I'm so engrossed in that story. I'd like to see more of it. But I do like the opening kind of 30 minutes and seeing Gordon Cole and the whole ridiculous sequence with Lil, the woman at the airport. The ridiculous things that she's doing, and he like intuits like all the hidden messages of like she was wearing a sour face, which means we're gonna have trouble with the local. It's just like,
yeah.
why couldn't they just tell him that? I get this supposed to be code and everything, but you'd think they'd have a better method. Um, but yeah,
And the $2 million they must have paid David Bowie to be in it for 30 seconds.
yeah. Do you know much about Bowie's involvement? Like his thoughts on it?
No, no, nothing.
No, okay. So there was an interview I read once where he was a bit dissatisfied with the experience because it was so short, and he was there for a couple of days and that was it. And
Yeah,
I won't spoil anything, but okay, very mild spoiler. The sequence where he goes into the FBI office, they're like, Jeffries, where the hell have you been? All that stuff.
yeah,
There is a tiny flashback of that in season 3. Very mild spoiler. But in
yeah,
that flashback, his voice has been dubbed over by another actor because Bowie requested that they do that because he was really like he wasn't happy with his southern accent. So
yeah,
he said like, okay, you can use the footage. This is around the time Bowie was kind of very ill, just
yeah,
before he passed away, and he said, okay, you can use the footage, but don't use my voice. Like, do it with and he wanted like an authentic southern, voice actor to do it.
yeah,
But I do love but it's such a so fitting somehow that Bowie would be an FBI
yeah,
agent, and I love that scene, and it kind of for me melds with the missing pieces where you see a lot more of that, and even in general the missing pieces. We're not going to do a separate video on the missing pieces, but because I watched that with the missing pieces, they kind of blend together with me, and I haven't seen the film enough times to discern some of those moments.
yeah,
Um, and we'll talk about that a little bit, I guess, at some point. But yeah, I love the Philip Jeffries mystery that was very obscure in the movie. Gets a little bit more in the missing pieces with the stuff with him at the hotel, but
yeah,
even then, it's very it's very out there and not much to. He does say, "I was at their meeting in the above the convenience store," and we can kind of guess what that means. So,
yeah.
yeah. How do you feel about Cooper in the film? The kind of very the slim pickings of Agent Cooper in this
Yeah,
movie.
it's definitely sporadic, isn't it?
Yeah,
But I do like that he was included, and I think it made sense for the start of the film for him to be there. Um, Definitely, just sort of getting to know the case basically, from what's already happened. So I do like the inclusion. It kind of could have just been completely Law's story, just set in Twin Peaks. I don't feel like that start bit was necessary, but I do like that it was included, and I do like that you sort of find a bit more about, especially with the caravan scene at the very start, where he's going to find where he finds a ring under the caravan, and obviously, um, we got the old what, I can't remember the family name again. If you think I'm bad with Twin Peaks names,
Ooh.
this is going to be more difficult.
Yeah, no, this is and it's the Tremons, I think.
Something like
But
that, isn't it? Yeah.
there's also the Chalfonts, but I think that it's the same, and it's there's a couple of things in Twin Peaks that so Tulpas, right?
Yeah.
That hasn't been mentioned yet, and I'm sure that it was. So I don't know whether like I'm getting that Mandela effect or whatever. And then there's also the Chalfonts and the Tremons, but I don't. Yeah, I don't know. I need to look into that. I think I almost feel like I missed an episode in season 2 or something that has all this vital
Yeah.
pieces of information. But yeah, that's the Chet Desmond thing. He reaches under the caravan for the ring, and that's the end of Chet Desmond.
Yeah.
At least for now. Oh, I'm sorry. Shit. Fuck. I might have spoiled something there, or not. Maybe that was intentional.
Yeah.
We never see him again. Yeah, that is a weird kind of like it kind of freeze frames. He leans down, and then that's it. Now the ring. What did you get of the ring with the owl cave kind of symbol on it? What was your reading on just that object in the film?
So it seems to be whoever the ring comes to dies.
Yeah.
From what I've gathered so far. But then we don't actually see that ring at all in Twin Peaks.
No. No.
As far as I'm aware.
I don't think
Um,
so.
no. So there's other people that die in Twin Peaks. But I guess the people that do die are from Leland's doing, because people are going to find out. Although Laura's cousin,
Maddie.
Maddie,
Yeah.
she doesn't actually find out anything, does he? He just straight up murders her. So I don't know. I don't know. Maybe the ring was like an afterthought, which just progressed with Fire Walk with Me. I assume it was, because it wasn't in the show, was it?
Not to
Um,
my knowledge, no.
yeah. So no, I think it's a cool idea. It's got definitely got some iconography to it at this point, and I'm assuming
Yes.
it's gonna maybe show up in the limited event series. So
Yeah,
possibly.
it's a tricky one for me because I never get a good handle on it. Like what exactly? Because it feels like it's a cursed ring
Hmm.
that kind of brings badness upon the person who wears it. I don't know, but there's also a sense of it being a protective kind of token or not totem. Like there's a but then it's kind of because Laura takes it. And from what I gather, because it's like she talks about how Bob wants to like be me, he wants to possess her, right?
Yeah.
And she throws the ring on at the end, and that means he can't do that, and she ends up in the Black Lodge. I guess that's what that means. But then you have Cooper telling her not to take it, like gravely,
Yeah.
like don't take the ring. I like that stuff a lot, where it's kind of like an interquel, where it's like it's kind of a sequel, but not really because it's set after the TV show, but it's events after the TV show, like Annie showing up in a
Yeah.
dream that Laura had, and says the good Dale is in the lodge. Write it down in your diary. I did read there's a good book I got with interviews with Lynch. He talked about that moment. He really liked it because he says it's like someone finding the name Lee Harvey Oswald in like the 1920s or something. Just this idea of like, whoa,
Yeah.
what the fuck? Like, and he said he wished we could have done more with that, where time starts to kind of bend or whatever. So that's an
Yeah.
interesting element. Maybe they would have continued that thread maybe with another movie if they were going to do two more.
I do like the timeless aspect of the Black Lodge. I just like
Yeah,
time doesn't move the same as it does in the real world as such.
definitely. Yeah. And then also the fact that she has the dream of the man from another place with the ring. And
Yeah.
he turns and he looks into the camera as he's holding it. And it's so that's kind of I guess Laura's point of view. And then Cooper's like, don't take the ring. So we now have a dream that she's had of someone she's never met, Cooper, and then in the show, Cooper had the dream that she had in her diary. So there's a link there that's much more overt in this film, I think, and and then the scene with Cooper and Albert when he's saying, okay, so I don't know, it's like he's sitting there and he's trying to like figure out who's going to be the next victim of this potential serial killer, and he's
Yeah,
like, high school girl, blonde hair, troubled, drugs, and Albert's like, great,
yeah,
you've described every teenager in America, but like there's something interesting, especially the ending, not to jump ahead, where he's kind of standing there as this kind of silent, kind of guardian angel almost, although she's looking up at a more literal angel. And there's
yeah,
just something about that. Because in the second half of season two, I feel like Cooper's interest in Laura is completely non existent, but yet there is some theory that Cooper is in love with Laura or in love with the idea of her or whatever. And that's kind
yeah,
of the central theme of Twin Peaks. I don't think that's the case. I think he's more in love with Twin Peaks as a whole. I think he just loves
yeah,
that place and those people.
yeah. I never really got that connection myself, but
No, but it is interesting, and there's definitely
yeah,
that link between them. And so to end on that image, which was for so long the final image of Twin Peaks, is really interesting in the Black Lodge. And yeah, so it's a very dense film with a lot going on. How do you feel about the actress who played Donna in this one?
definitely different. I didn't really feel anything towards her in terms of whether I liked her or not. I don't think. It just seemed like a fairly average performance, I would have thought. It didn't really make me feel one way or the other, to be honest. Definitely prefer Donna as a whole from Twin Peaks. Um, but it didn't really make me feel if they were going to get a replacement actress, it's never going to kind of live up to the character that we've grown over for 2 seasons of a show. So yeah, it is what it is. I didn't really feel one way or the other about it, really.
Yeah, I hate recasting in general. I think it's just so
Yeah,
distracting. But I like it in this film. And I think that because it's so much from Laura's point of view, and Donna's part of this story is like this, uh, her friend who's much more on the innocent side of things, and the corruption of her innocence is coming out to kind of her following Laura and trying to kind of keep up with her and stuff, like in the nightclub. Um, and I feel like the actress who plays her in the movie gives off a much more kind of younger feel and more of a naive, innocent feel. And so I almost like the idea that maybe this is just the way that Laura views Donna, and maybe we see
yeah.
more of an objective view of her in the show. I don't know, but it doesn't bother me too much. But I love the scene
I,
where they're lying down and they're talking about. Or Donna says, do you think if you were falling through space, you'd stay at the same pace or you'd go faster and faster? And like that's a nice scene. I like the mood of it. I don't know.
yeah.
Quiet before the storm.
I don't mind a minor spoiler. Does
Mhm.
does she return for the main show for the return?
Um, we'll put a button on that because at the end of this
Okay.
discussion, I wanted to ask you if you wanted to know if there's this character or this character not in there. So
Okay.
even if that's the only one you want, I will give you that at the end of the discussion.
Okay.
Yeah. Um.
There was a scene just going back where all of the people from the other side are sat in a room. It's like a dilapidated house by the looks of it. Was that house the original Black Lodge? Do you know, or was it just open to interpretation, or was that house something that I missed that
The
actually existed?
you'd never get like a firm fact on that on something like
Yeah,
that,
yeah.
but I interpret it to be the room above the convenience store that they lived in. Where Mike
Oh,
was saying,
right.
we lived above a convenience store.
That makes
Um,
sense.
I mean that's a read on it, I suppose.
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean it could be Black Lodge related. Who knows? Um,
yeah,
we had I love the line, "Is it future or is it past?" Which is spoken in the Black Lodge, which only continues to that just supports your kind of comment about time not really moving properly in the
yeah.
Black Lodge. Um,
There was a scene on the missing pieces where you get a close up of the man from another place. And he's just sitting there with he's like a bit of close up on the screen. It's one of the best looking scenes I'd seen in the show, actually. The actual detail of it was brilliant. Just a segue there, but Yeah.
Yeah, great visuals in this, and I mean the real beating heart of this, the beating black heart of this film is the relationship between Laura and her father.
Yeah.
I wonder how people would come to this film if they watched it first. Because I feel like you kind of need a little bit of a working knowledge of the
Yeah.
show firsthand, otherwise it kind of
Exactly.
just jumps out at you as very random. I don't know, but it's a difficult one to perform. I give credit to both Cheryl Lee and Ray Wise on that one because it's
I can only imagine that's why it got booed at Cannes. Was it Cannes it got booed at?
yeah. Well, I think
Yeah.
I think it got booed, but it was in that interview book I was reading. Lynch like got sick the night before the premiere. It would like I think it was
Yeah.
building up that people were not liking it, and he said he felt like he was made of glass that day, and he's blocked most of it out of his memory. So
Yeah.
kind of a painful experience. But yeah, I don't know whether people just expected more of the show or not. It's definitely, I think people have seen it in a new light in recent years. Maybe it's gained a new found appreciation. Um, I hasten to talk about every single moment because there's a lot of them. But I think that again, the central Leland Laura thing is like the scene where yeah, is that in the film? Say, I have to check with you. Is that in the film where he's asking her if she's washed her hands? That is in the movie,
Yes.
right? Yeah.
Yeah. That's in the movie. Yeah.
Like what a like painfully uncomfortable scene
Yeah.
from something so innocuous. It's just like a father um, admonishing his child for not washing her hands, but there's so much loaded, you know, I don't know, intent behind it. It's very uncomfortable.
And then in the missing pieces, you've got the polar opposite, where they're all sat around the table and
Yeah.
he's doing the greetings in Norwegian. Um, and yeah, it's almost a really nice moment where they're all just like happy. And then like the
Yeah.
polar opposite to that is, the whole washing hands bit where they sat around the table, and I think that was
Yeah.
around the table, wasn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's just like a complete shift from that scene to that scene. It just shows how affected Leland was by Bob. Um, and obviously we don't know what Leland was like before Bob, but you kind of get that sense that, Bob has really messed him up in that way. And he does have these moments of clarity, I guess. He
Mm.
must do, where he is himself. But yeah, just Bob aspect is just terrifying.
There is a moment, I forget where it is or where it relates to the story, but where we just see a close up of him and his face is going through so many different emotions, and you almost kind of read him having a moment of lucidity and realizing what he's doing, and then it kind of the mask comes back down.
So there a moment where he apologizes to her, or he says he loves her, and he walks out the room when she's in the bedroom or something like that.
Yeah, yeah, he walks into the bedroom. I think it's after the sex scene. I think
Yeah.
I'm not sure, but yeah, and she's looking at him with. That's an interesting moment as well because you feel like that's the that she. That's another interesting thing as well. Like, is this idea that perhaps Bob is like Laura's kind of projection,
Mm.
that she's created that to kind of mask the reality of it or whatever. How do you feel about that actually? The idea that it could be there is no Bob and it is just this horrible thing, or do you sit more on the side of it is this actual literal, possessive
I,
demon?
I think I think if I'd only seen up until Leland's death, then yes. But because we've seen Bob now in going into other characters and sort of the expansion of Bob. If
Yeah,
it had just led up to Leland's death, then yes, maybe that's
mm,
maybe like an extension of Leland,
yeah,
like a Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde type of deal.
yeah.
But I think now we've expanded on the show and we've seen Bob go into other characters, especially now, obviously, Coop. Yeah, I think yeah, had it led up to that point maybe, but now obviously we know a bit more about Bob, and there's not just Bob. I mean, Bob's just one evil entity, isn't he? So there's a whole family of the bastards.
That there is, yes. Although I would say that the intention of like the man from another place. I mean, he's there sat around the table with Bob, but yeah, I sometimes don't know whether he's supposed to be an evil entity, and I feel like a lot of that stuff is so obscure. It's
The
difficult to
man,
get full.
the man with one arm.
Yeah,
I can't remember the entity that inhabits him.
yeah.
But I was wondering if that was part of the same family.
Well, the most that is generally accepted, I think, is that the man from another place is the one-armed man's arm that he cut off.
Oh, okay.
He does say, and I believe it's in the movie, he says, "I'm the arm," or something very. It's fairly explicit in terms of
Ah,
that. He
fucking
doesn't.
hell. That's
He did.
interesting.
Yeah, I forgot what I was going to ask you if you caught that. It's fairly explicit, but at the same time, it's not like so explicit that you can kind of interpret it if you want, I guess.
Yeah.
So yeah, but he does say, "I'm the arm," which is an interesting
Yeah, absolutely.
aspect to it, I suppose. Um, but I like that we get a lot of Black Lodge stuff in the film, but
Yeah.
then the really it's this exploration of this character Laura, which is just I think her performance is really incredible.
Yeah.
It's there's so much that that's demanded of her as an actress, I think, in lots of different scenarios and settings. And yeah, I like how you see her being like normal and stuff, quote unquote normal, and then it just slips, and she's so far gone, and it feels like a fairly realistic depiction of someone who's really going through a lot and
Yeah.
is trying to maybe act normal in front of certain people, but is just falling apart at the seams.
What did you think of the Jock Renault nightclub, nudity and getting off, getting drugged up and all that sort of stuff? What did you think of that? Especially with Donna as well. Donna is
Yeah,
such a mild-mannered character. Just, sort of letting loose and
yeah,
maybe not even letting loose. She got drugged, didn't she? I think actually.
yeah. I think as far as like Donna is concerned, it's kind of a moving gesture that she's willing to go that far for someone
Yeah.
who doesn't go that far for the sake of maybe trying to save Laura, maybe trying to, I don't know, prove a point or whatever. And it's harsh to see Laura acting so, horrible towards her, kind of. It's really
Yeah.
only at the end when she sees that Donna is like, being taken advantage of that she completely snaps back into that mode of protecting her friend.
Yeah.
But I love the whole sequence with like the music and the subtitles. That's fairly unique. It's probably been done before, but I think anyone who's been in a nightclub before knows that you can't hear a fucking word anyone's saying
Yeah. Yeah.
unless you're like 2 centimeters away from them. And that droning music and the kind of the strobe lights and stuff, and doing something that the show couldn't do with showing the nudity and even just
Yeah.
f bombs being dropped. It feels like a more mature version of Twin Peaks in that sense.
Yeah.
But I do, and also just when she initially goes into the roadhouse and we have another Julie Cruz song, and just Laura listening to it and feeling it and getting moved by it and kind of, I guess,
Yeah.
feeling her own tragedy within the song was very, and it actually made me think of the scene with Cooper when he senses that something's wrong. I think when he's in the roadhouse, it's the scene where Maddie gets killed and we find out who the killer is. And we have Julie Cruz singing, and it's this beautiful song, and Cooper's there with tears in his eyes. So again, I'm feeling like the connection between them in some sense, and I like the obscurity of the kind of Laura Cooper, can't really call it a relationship, but connection, I guess.
Yeah. So I was watching Slice of Lynch,
Hmm.
and they were talking about I think Madgekin. I call him Madgekin now. Madgekin was asking Lynch, the sort of inception of Bob. And I know you told me this story prior,
Mm.
but when we was watching Firewalk with Me, there's a scene where Laura's underneath the light shade, which what they're called, the fan light,
Ceiling fan, yeah.
yeah, ceiling fan. That's it. It's
I
fan
don't.
light.
There's probably a correct word for it. I don't know, but we all
Yeah,
know what a ceiling fan is. So
and Lynch was talking about how he was under the ceiling light, ceiling light, fuck it, the fan light, whatever you want to call it. And he was on the stairs, and he was talking about how Bob was in the bedroom, or I can't remember his name,
Frank,
the actual.
yeah. I think the term was don't lock yourself in there, Frank,
That
and
was it.
the
And
idea
he's
of being locked in kind of sparked something.
Yeah, and he was moving the chest of drawers, which is where Laura hides a diary. Um, and that just really struck a chord with me because I watched obviously that after we watched Fire Walk with Me, and just that connection of Lynch being on the stairs where Laura is and Frank or Bob being in the bedroom finding the diary. But yeah, just really I really like that because it was just Lynch's own experience, so he just put straight into the film.
Yeah, he's very much about catching those kinds of ideas and taking moments of inspiration, and leads to some interesting cinematic moments, I would say.
Yeah, because you're like 1 second away from that scene never happening if Lynch hadn't been on the staircase. That may not have even been a thing in the film. So I really like when that stuff just sort of builds naturally.
Yeah, just completely just serendipitous stuff, happy accidents.
Yeah,
Speaking of happy accidents, a quick aside: I was completely randomly came across an old Facebook Messenger conversation between, I've told you about it, between me and
yeah.
Matt, and it was from 4 years ago, and it was when you first went through Twin Peaks, and we were talking about it, like sending like gifts back and forth, and I have no memory of it. Gone. Like and it was kind of startling. I was like, oh, what? Like when we first started this, it was like we were wondering like what's the mystery of how much you've actually seen,
Yeah,
which was all there waiting to be solved in my Facebook Messenger history, where you kind of just petered out after the beginning of the second season, I guess. And
yeah,
there's even a bit where I'm like, "Come on, you should be at Firewalk with me by now," and then it just ended there. So
yeah.
at least that's been solved now. But I really do not remember that. So that's just like,
No, I remember talking to you about it, but I could not remember for the life of me where I'd got to until I'd watched the show again, and then they would got to a point where I hadn't seen before. So
it is interesting seeing, just in general, seeing the show in widescreen is almost a different experience. And even though the show is shot on film, it feels more like a movie, and that's interesting. I don't know. It kind of added a
it was
little
kind
bit
of,
for me.
I will say it's kind of weird going back and see Bobby being such the immature character when he's matured so much at this point in the show. I think he's still that very much jock, kind of stereotype teenager, loose cannon, in still in Firewalk with Me, isn't he? So it's kind of cool seeing that, but kind of jarring at the same time.
Yeah, that is a good point. I remember when I first watched the film, I was very put off by the fact that he kills someone in the movie, even though
Yeah,
it's
I forgot about that.
even though it's not like he planned it or it was like an intention. I'm going to kill someone. He was literally defending himself from a guy pulling a gun
Yeah,
on him. But in my head, I'm like, well, you don't get any of that. You don't feel that in the show because it hadn't been written then.
yeah.
But I didn't really feel that this time around, really. So I remember it was a sticking point for me when I first watched the film, and I thought like, I feel like it doesn't make sense continuity wise. I feel like he'd be more rattled by having just killed someone.
Yeah,
But it flies a bit better now, I guess, for some reason. Don't know why.
yeah, and he killed him for baby powder, baby Formula One.
Yeah. Oh, and we were graced with the incredible acting of Eric DeRay. We had Leo Johnson back for a
Yeah,
couple of scenes. I'm going to show you, Shelley, how to clean this floor. It's just like,
I like
oh
the I
man.
like the inclusion of the one armed man outside the train car, and he just does he fall over or something like that?
I still don't even know like how that connects to everything really. Like why he was
Yeah,
there and why he was trying to save them. I don't know. So as much of a fan
but
as
I
I
like
am,
I
I
like the helpless of it that he even if he wanted to, he couldn't have helped them
mm,
because how the
yeah.
fuck would he get in the train car?
Right. So now I could just imagine Lynch having like a 5 minute scene of him trying to get in and just like
Yeah,
falling and like just,
that seems like something Lynch would do.
yeah. Well, yeah, he probably has the better instincts not to put that in such a pivotal moment. And we got to see the whole night of her death play out. All those kind of things that we could maybe imagined when the show was going on, and we got to see the full whack. So, how do you feel about that sequence, the of her final night, and just the ending of the film, I guess, in that sense, and how it kind of very bleakly ends her story and the movie?
Just distressing, man. It's just such a horrible scene to watch. Um, so I think it all starts at Jack Renault's place, doesn't it? I think.
That's something that got me because I feel like in my head I kind of skate over that aspect of it, but in the film
Mm,
you see that he's essentially raped or is raping Laura, and that it just adds a whole other. I mean, they mention that in like the first episode that
yeah.
or they say she had sex with multiple men, but it's very clear that he was being rough with her and so, and it just like it's just layering on the horror of it all, you know.
Yeah, and we've got the bird in the background as well, which alludes to the show. Um, yeah, and then obviously Leland comes along and is it Leland comes along, doesn't he, and takes him?
Yeah,
Yeah, up to the train court, and then
yeah.
yeah, it's just fucking horrible, man. And then I think afterwards he's quite remorseful, isn't he, that he's killed her?
I can't
And
actually. It's
does
like
he? Does Leland come out and
it's like we watched this a week ago, and I've already forgotten if
yeah?
there is that moment. Um,
I
yeah, I
can't remember if he cries.
don't think so. But he does get taken to the
I could be confusing the show there, maybe. I don't know.
yeah. He does get taken to the Black Lodge in a very bizarre sequence where it's like it's Bob and Leland's floating,
Yeah,
and the gammon bosia, the creamed corn, which is supposed to be like this feasting upon pain and sorrow for the denizens of the Black Lodge, and
yeah,
that's another thing I'm not too sure what I think. Well, I guess it is depicted as pain and sorrow, but like the whole Garmin Bosia thing is, it's one of the many parts of Twin Peaks that,
yeah.
I don't always feel like I need an explanation, but sometimes I'm like,
I think it's actually nice guessing for yourself and trying to figure it out yourself.
yeah, but then sometimes I don't have an answer. But like, I'm
Yeah,
okay.
yeah,
I'm okay with that as well. At the same time, I think a lot of it is mood and effect, and it works in its own way, I suppose. We get to see the moment with James just before that, where they kind of have that intense conversation. That's another thing where, like, James is kind of there to kind of, pout and mope for a couple of scenes in the movie and roll up
yeah,
on his motorcycle and stuff. But we do get that scene where she randomly screams, you know. But like
yeah,
that sequence to me made me think of the scene with Donna in the pilot, where they're out there on the out in the woods kind of, and very intense conversation. But she, like she's saying like no one really knows me, not even Donna knows me and stuff, and
yeah.
that Laura that you knew is gone and all that kind of stuff. It's a heartbreaking performance. It really is. And you think that like Cheryl Lee, I think she'd done stage work, but Twin Peaks was her first acting job on screen.
Yeah.
And I think she just has a charisma about her, which most really good actors do. They just have something about them where it's there's just an essence on screen. So she had that from the beginning, but I guess that she played Maddie, but
I was going to say because she'd only really played Maddie at that point.
yeah, I mean
Because
there's snippets of Laura,
snippets, yeah,
yeah,
snippets, yeah,
very small pieces, but this is it has to be her first proper leading role, and it's she nailed it. It was really a really raw performance, I thought.
yeah, fantastic.
And then we end with the scene in the Black Lodge. Oh, one other tiny thing is the dream where it's the painting on the wall with the door.
Yes,
I don't find it like unsettling, but it's kind of I don't know, eerie. Eerie is the word. I don't know.
the painting gets swapped, doesn't it?
Um,
So you had the angel picture originally.
no, that's still there. In the angel
Oh, is it?
painting, the angel disappears,
That's it. That's it.
and then it appears again at the end of the film in the Black Lodge. But no, there's the one with the door,
Yeah,
and I think she goes into the painting in her dream, and then
because she finds the painting outside the double R, doesn't she?
yeah, I think
Is that
it's
right?
doesn't the grandson give it to her? I
Yeah,
think
that's it.
yeah,
That's it. Yeah,
the
yeah.
Tremons. I did look that up. So they are the Tremons.
Oh,
But
okay,
when they go to when Chet Desmond goes to the trailer park, Harry Dean says it was an old woman and her grandson, the
that's
Chalfonts.
it.
So that's where
That's it.
there's the two names and kind of that's just a whole other who knows what the fuck that means, the Chalfonts and the Tremons. Oh, and we got like I think a really unsettling character visually as the jumping man who's in the that kind of Black Lodge ish sequence with above the convenience store. He has that white mask with the long nose,
Yes.
and the grandson also wears it. And then there's a monkey,
Yeah.
and like close ups on mouths and like going into the tongue, like very um, weird stuff. One thing I wanted to mention, it's a very tiny thing, but I read that Quentin Tarantino saw this, I believe, at the Cannes Film Festival, and he said that once I saw Fire Walk with Me, I knew that David Lynch had disappeared so far up his own ass that I never wanted to see another David Lynch film again. And I love David Lynch, and I just think like, where is all this negativity coming from? Because
Yeah.
I look at this film and I look at Blue Velvet and Eraserhead, and films that generally people seem to have positive feelings for, even though they're very dark movies. But
Yeah.
this doesn't feel too far removed from a David Lynch film. It doesn't feel like it feels a little bit removed from Twin Peaks, not entirely the show, but yeah, it's a strange one for me. It seems to be more well regarded now, as I said, but people weren't happy at the time.
I actually
Um,
think, from what I've seen so far of David Lynch's works, that Twin Peaks is quite tame compared to Eraserhead in terms of, that real visual absurdity,
yeah.
in terms of like the whole nightmare of Eraserhead
Mm,
is just horrible, and it's awe-inspiring to watch. It ridiculously gay, it gets you glance, and you don't really want to look away. You kind of want to look away, but you don't want to look away in Eraserhead.
yeah.
It's real crazy visuals. But I think for me, Twin Peaks feels a lot tamer in tone than from what I've seen of his. Well, obviously, Straight Stories, the other one that I've seen, and that's the
Mm,
complete other end of the spectrum, which is, I think classified as is probably the most normal film, even though
yeah.
there is still sprinklings of his magic in there.
Mm,
Um, but yeah, I think like Twin Peaks compared to Eraserhead, it's just another level.
yeah. Again, it's just one of those things, and I don't know whether it is just a subject matter, and it is like, okay, here's someone who you know is going to die. Nothing's going to change that. Now let's also see how horrible the last 7 days of her life was, and then let's show her getting brutally killed,
Yeah,
raped.
well, I
The
think
end.
the world's just a lot different now anyway, isn't it? It was people talk about shit these days, whereas even going back to the 90s, people didn't talk about this shit.
Hmm.
People didn't want to talk about it, or I don't mean people still don't want to talk about it today, but I think it's easier to talk about this sort of stuff these days, whereas people just used to, you know, shut up and carry on sort of thing.
There was a line in that the Lynch interview book where the interviewer was saying, like, why do you think that this didn't resonate with people? Do you think it's the incest and that kind of thing? And Lynch said something to the effect of, yeah, I think that people are uncomfortable with topics like incest because they're doing it at home. Just like, Jesus Christ. But he says that it goes on a lot more than you think it does, and it's always the person who, oh, you never would have thought it, you know.
Yeah,
And I think that is kind of one of the core elements of the Twin Peaks story is the idyllic homecoming queen, perfect, and then all the dark underbelly, and then the on top of it the fact that it was the father all along.
yeah.
Anything else you'd like to add? I guess. Well, any feelings on the last scene in the Black Lodge? How did you feel about that as an ending moment to the story?
Yeah, because it's flipped, isn't it, compared to Twin Peaks? So you've got Coop standing over Laura rather than Laura standing over Coop, which I quite liked because obviously time works differently, and there's sort of like sort of a parallel universe, isn't it? So Coop's dream is the opposite to Laura's, which I kind of liked. Um, but yeah, man, it was just such brilliant. I love the angel because I think that's one of the things that really brought a comfort, and she's now
Yeah,
see it. But it's kind of weird because being in the Black Lodge seems to me like almost like a hellish
yeah,
kind of, and she's seeing like a positive thing. So I don't really get that maybe because the Black Lodge is, there's a White Lodge and a Black Lodge, isn't there? So there's, I kind of could have understood that if she was in the White Lodge, but she's not. She's in the Black Lodge, so she's seeing this really nice imagery of something that comforts her, and
yeah,
she's got Coop comforting her as well. Um, Whereas the Black Lodge is synonymous with evil and
Or is it? I'm not quite sure. And I will say this: I don't think it works. I think that um, overall in terms of I don't think you can fit all the pieces together for Twin Peaks and have it all makes sense. I think that's
Yeah,
fine. I think it is more mood and feeling that's the thing of it, and you know, uh, so she has the ring, which from what I can tell kind of protects her from Bob possessing her, and then
yeah,
she does end up in the Black Lodge, and it feels like she's kind of protected from Bob there, in some sense. And when
mm,
we see her in the Black Lodge, she, I mean, there's sometimes I feel like I know her, referring to Laura. Is she even aware of who she is? I don't know, but you don't get a sense that she's living a horrible existence there. But either way, I just think the notion that this angel that kind of disappeared on the painting in her bedroom, maybe making her feel like I'm not even worthy of that. I'm not even worthy of some divine salvation from God. Like it's just
yeah,
I deserve to die kind of thing. And I would imagine a lot of people who go through abuse like that, they probably get into that horrible place of feeling like maybe they deserve it or whatever. And so that's kind of what I read from that. And then seeing the angel is kind of like her realizing, oh no, I am actually, this wasn't my
yeah.
fault, you know. And there's obviously that kind of the tears and the laughter, and it's a very, it's tears of joy, but there's still, I think, a lot of mixed feelings in that. It's a very strong ending to the film, and leaves me sitting there as the credits roll, just like fuck, that's a film.
Yeah. Because so at this point, because it's a difficult one because there's spirits that go to the Black Lodge, like Laura has, assumedly be taken because of Bob,
Mm,
but the ring protects her,
right.
is what the theory is. But she's gone to the Black Lodge because Bob's killed her.
Yeah.
So she is now kind of Bob's spirit as such. That's how
Yeah.
I perceived it.
Okay. Yeah. But I mean, we also see the giant in the Black Lodge at the end of season 2, and the old waiter, and
Yes.
you get a very friendly feeling from them. So it's so again, that's what I mean by I say I don't think it works entirely, because it's not like when they decided to make Twin Peaks, they're like, right, let's chart everything down and make sure it's airtight. I
Yeah.
think those inconsistencies don't really matter too much,
No, no,
and
absolutely not.
but it's fun to think about, and that's kind of interesting. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So it feels strange and kind of sad to get to this point already that we're done with the original run of Twin Peaks as it was, and for the 2.5 people following these videos, we're going to take a break from Twin Peaks, which is almost like the notion that we could start the return tomorrow is really fucking exciting to me. I'm so keen, but instead of having Christmas in November, we're gonna push it off a little bit and have something to look forward to.
It
Um,
feels like the scene in Harry Potter 4 where he's force feeding him the water in the cave. He's like, stop, stop,
oh,
don't break me.
that's actually the 6th Harry Potter film.
Six Harry Potter
Yeah,
film.
yeah,
Jesus.
yeah. Complete sidebar. That sequence in the book was incredible, and it was very good in the film, but they could have done better with it. Anyway, don't get me started on Harry Potter, because we'll be here for longer than you would care to think. So, what we're going to do next is we're going to watch every David Lynch film. I think that's the working plan. We've done one now, obviously, so there's 9 more to go. And what we're going to do is I'm going to pick the first film that we start with moving forward, and then Matt will pick the next one, and we'll alternate. So it's a bit of fun in it. You don't know what we're doing next, and I won't know what we're doing after that. So we'll end the video with that. But as far as the future of Twin Peaks, how do you feel about the return? What are you expecting, or what are you hoping to get from that as a kind of the final chunk of the Twin Peaks story?
Um, uh, it's a difficult one because knowing what I know now that Evil Coop is out and he's been out for potentially 25 years. Um, yeah, it all depends how it follows on from Twin Peaks and what sort of path they've taken. I mean, they've got, pretty much at liberty to do whatever they want, haven't they, really? Going off the assumption that it was following from the last episode of um the second season, but 25 years later. I don't know, it's a difficult one, man. I just don't know where the story's going because we've ended Windermill now.
Mm.
We've still got Bob inside of Coop, or Evil Coop that's out there. We've got cast members now that have passed, in the show and probably in real life, I would assume. So yeah, it's a difficult one, man. I honestly don't know where the show's going, and in terms of the storyline, at least, I'm assuming it's going to center around Coop for the most part, given what ended season two, and with Evil Coop. I just could because I don't know who's in it as well. I can't really gauge, what sort of path it's going to take, I suppose. But I'm really intrigued. I can't wait for it.
Yeah.
If I could jump in it tonight and
Yeah.
go to work in the morning, not even having a wink of sleep, I would.
Yeah, but it will be nice to kind of have something to look forward to as well. As
Absolutely,
I've
yeah.
loved doing this, and I've loved doing it like side by side with you. It's been a lot of fun, and
But like I said, Twin Peaks fans had to wait 25 years. We can wait a month.
yeah. And for me, I rolled all the way through when I first started Twin Peaks. Like the new season was like halfway through airing, so I had like no gap. I just rolled right the way through.
Yeah,
But I think it would be nice to see his other films because there's quite a few you haven't seen. There's two that
yeah.
I haven't seen, and there's a specific actor who appears in a couple of Lynch films, and they appear in The Return. And I think it has more resonance when you've seen those other films. Not that it's connected story wise, but just there's a poignancy to him working with that person again and the role that they play in The Return. And so that I think would be nice.
What are the two you haven't seen then?
The Elephant Man I saw, I think when I was a kid, at least bits of it, but
Okay.
I couldn't say that I've seen it. I need to properly watch it as an adult.
Yeah.
And then the other one is Inland Empire, which at 3 hours long is always a bit of a daunting one.
Yeah.
And it certainly seems to me like Inland Empire is probably the most divisive film he's made.
Yeah.
There's some people who really just don't get on with it at all, and knowing the production history of it as well, where it was kind of we'll get into that when we get to it, but it's one I've waited for the right moment. I guess this was the right moment. We'll find out together what that film's all about.
We'll watch it on our phones.
Get real. You'll think you've seen it. You'll think you've experienced it. But you won't have seen it at all if you've seen a film on your fucking telephone. As Lynch truly intended.
So before you do the pick then for the film,
Mm-hmm.
you said you were going to ask me.
Yeah. So is there any characters that you want to know if they are in it? I think before I watched The Return, I did look at the cast list. I think because I was intrigued. But if there's any you would like me to confirm or deny, and I'll do my best. But it's or not. It's an option. I just thought maybe if you wanted a little tease, and I could offer.
There's a couple of characters that I know aren't in it at this point. I think Donna would be one that I would like to know if she's in it. The actress from the seasons.
She is not. I will say that.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, and I think in one of the extras they talked about trying to get her back for the movie, and they said she just flat out refused. So I think it
Wow.
probably tides over from that where she wasn't interested.
Yeah. It's got to have been something to do with their relationship, hasn't it? Her and Carl McLaughlin.
I think so, maybe. Yeah, I'm not sure.
Now, this is an interesting one. Julie Cruz, because we were talking the other night and you said she'd gone on quite the rant
Mm-hmm.
about the limited event. I was just wondering if she does make an appearance and she just didn't like her appearance in the show. Because she seemed quite self-centered when I watched her on some of the footage.
Yeah, I remember you saying. She does not appear in The Return.
Okay.
Yeah.
I wonder if they'd have a license to use her music at least. I would assume so, wouldn't they?
You might hear a voice at some
Okay.
point. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, I won't go any deeper than that. there was just a few skirting characters that I was interested in. So,
Okay. Who do you think is not in it then? You said that there's a couple you know aren't in it, or
oh, Man from Another Place, but just the actor.
oh yeah, I told you
Um,
about that. Yeah,
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 and I know Ed's in it because we had that
yeah,
conversation initially before. I think before we started Twin Peaks, wasn't it?
yeah.
That he just randomly called his house that he never goes to, and he was
Mm.
there.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
Crazy.
oh, Nadine.
Yeah, yeah. She's in it.
Yeah, I thought she might be. I knew she was still alive because I'd watched People Under the Stairs, and I went on IMDb and saw she was still alive ages ago.
Mm.
So I knew she must have been alive at that point. So
I can say that there's more than one character in The Return where the actor had died, but the character is still a part of it. So,
okay, I did see, in fact, a slight spoiler,
mm,
which I didn't mention. That was Heather Graham. It said was when I looked up on the cast, well, not the cast list, just a um, IMDb page. It showed the return, so I knew she was in that.
yeah. But yeah, so there's some interesting creative stuff going on with the characters who were played by people who are no longer with us at the time that was made. But yeah, it's probably best to go in mostly blind on that stuff. There's a lot of new characters. It's a massive story. But yeah, it's something to kind of enjoy discovering as it unfolds, and I'm really excited to return to it.
A
Okay,
lot to look forward to.
yeah. So our next mission will be a David Lynch film. So I have decided that because I was thinking about this, and I've kind of have a rationale for this pick. I was thinking, well, we just done Twin Peaks, the original run of it and stuff. And there are two films to me that feel the most like Twin Peaks in his filmography, and that's Mulholland Drive and Blue Velvet. From the score and some of the themes of mystery and so on.
Yeah,
So I thought, well, let's take a break from that. So we're not going to do those. Um, so we're going to watch The Elephant Man.
cool.
Yeah,
I'm down for that.
yeah. So I'm intrigued to watch it properly. We both have the four. You still have the 4K version, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, so I haven't watched it in 4. Well, I've watched it at all when we're talking about. I had the Blu-ray for like 10 years and I never fucking watched it, but
yeah.
still, it'd be nice to experience it in 4K and a true story and some great actors: John Hurt, Anthony Hopkins, and it'll be another one ticked off the list for me. So we'll do that next and give a little discussion on it.
Cool to see one we both haven't seen. So,
Yeah, did you very briefly? Do you know the story of how he came to direct The Elephant Man?
fuck all. No idea.
Do you know who produced The Elephant Man?
No.
Mel Brooks.
Oh, okay.
Right. So, Blazing Saddles and all this stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
And he started up a production company and he wanted to adapt this film and to produce it. And I forget the exact kind of like all the things that lead up into it. But the important part is someone who knew David Lynch, who knew Mel Brooks, was like, maybe you should think about David Lynch to direct Elephant Man. Well, what has he done? A film called Eraserhead. We'll get it for you. So they screened Eraserhead for Mel Brooks, and Lynch is waiting outside really nervously. Like, well, I think Lynch even said, like, they said to Lynch, we're going to show him Eraserhead. And he's like, well, it was nice knowing you. Like, that's it. We're done here. And apparently the story goes Mel Brooks walked out of Eraserhead and he's like, you're a genius. I love you. Let's do it. Like that for him just.
Oh, wow.
He thought this is an artist. This is a guy who's going to be able to do something with it. So it's, you never would have thought that anyone would look at Eraserhead and say that's someone who's just direct The Elephant Man. So, and then that kind of, and it's very interesting his career really, because The Elephant Man, I think he got nominated for Best Director at the Oscars. So if you go from Eraserhead, this like cult movie, and then straight to that. And then the next one was Dune, which like nearly killed the whole thing and was a terrible experience. It's a very weird shifting career that he's got.
Yeah.
Anyway, so Elephant Man next.
Sweet.
We'll leave Twin Peaks for a little while and return at the right moment. So we'll leave it there. A quote from the film. There's a lot. Do you want to go with that? Have you got any that you can remember that you might want to throw out to end this?
No, not I can think of.
No, okay.
There's going to be plenty, but you know what my memory's like.
Yeah. Jackie Treehorn.
Jackie Treehorn.
Jackie Tremont and Jackie Chalfont. What's that line that Cole has at the beginning? Something like, she's my mother's sister's girl, or something like that. I love Gordon Cole.
It's brilliant.
What do you think of the Bowie stuff? Does that intrigue you at all, or what did you feel about that beyond it just being a Bowie cameo?
Well, now we've now you've kind of planted that seed into my head, not deliberately, of course, of the Tremonts being above the
The convenience store, yeah.
convenience store. Yeah, that's really intriguing because it must have sent him crazy, him going there, and witnessing that family. So yeah, that was really intriguing actually. To just working my way back through that now, and yeah, I really like that. And it's more intriguing to say that there's something to do involved with that or like a flashback to the
Yeah.
new series.
I guess we'll end with it. I forget the exact wording of it, but it's a really cool moment in the film. I'm glad I remembered. Is when he walks into the office. I love the little kind of weird step he does. He walks into the office, and it's just like, Jeffrey's got to where the hell it's been damn near 2 years. Where you been? And Cooper's freaking out. He's like, Gordon, it's whatever. Like, meet Philip Jeffries, and then Jeffries, he points at Cooper. He's like, just who do you think that is there? And that to me is like, does he think that's the bad Cooper? Does he think, is he already been to that time and place? Like, so I love that kind of, like, I don't know. That's a nice
there was
little
that
beat.
really that really weird scene as well where he's running back and forth between the camera and then keeps stuck on the camera. Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah. Oh, we didn't even talk about the missing pieces. We won't go into it in depth. I like it. I think it's cool. It's a nice selection, like a feature length thing of deleted scenes. My favorite is probably the one with Pete at the mill.
Yeah,
the 2x4. I want a 2x4. It's not 2x4, and it doesn't fit in the movie, but it was nice to see those characters, and it was a fun little Lynchian comedic bit.
That's not how they're made.
And then he's like, "Oh, I get it. Okay, thank you." And you get to see all the other characters who weren't in the. It's nice to see the little moment with Ed and Norma. Actually, a couple of scenes with them. Actually, there's actually a really nice scene where she sits down at the diner and she has a little like cry, and then he shows up, and it's, that's a nice little beat with them.
Yeah.
But it's crazy that all that stuff came out like an hour and a half of like new stuff, like decades after the film had come out. So that must have been mind blowing for like fans who haven't seen that stuff. And
such a shame Jack Nance passed away, isn't it?
Yeah. He was a very memorable part of it. He was in Not Lost Highway, Wild at Heart. He has a little cameo in that, which is nice. So he's been in quite a few Lynch things. Anyway, we're just rambling now. It just keeps going, and so we'll leave it there. So, just who do you think that is there? That's what we'll end. Oh, the bit where he goes, "Hell, goddamn, baby, no!" This line, I love that scene. It makes no sense in some ways, but we'll leave it there. Thank you for listening, for watching, if you have, and we'll see you next time with The Elephant Man.